So there was a Welsh king called Math, and unless he was going to war, he always had to have his feet in the lap of a virgin. Now, the woman who was his current footrest was a beauty beyond compare, and these two brothers, Math's cousins, decided that they wanted her. So they cornered her, and by the end she was no longer a virgin. So she goes crying to the king, and the king punishes the brothers by turning them into animals, one male, one female, and cursing them to fornicate with each other. So the king now needs a new footrest. So the woman suggests her cousin Ironheart, and to test to see whether she was a virgin, she was made to jump over Math's rod, an actual rod, and well, she wasn't, and she immediately gave birth to a son, and then she fled in shame, and she gave birth to another son as she was running away. Now the first son was adopted by the king, and when he was baptized, he dived into the water and became Lord of the Seas, so they called him Dylan. The other son was found by a man called Gil, was a magician, and he raised the son and got very, very fond of him. But he decided that Ironheart had to name her own son, and so he took the son to Ironheart, and Ironheart said he will not bear any name but to the one that I gave him, and I will never name him. Annoyed with this, Gil devised a plan. He had the two of them dress up and pretend to be shoemakers, and they gained notoriety. And Ironheart called the two to court, and they made her shoes. And Ironheart was so pleased with them, she said to the younger of the two, I will call you Deft Hand, because your skill is so great. And Lou and Gil removed their disguise and said, you have named your son, I got one over on you. And Ironheart was like, I don't like being deceived. So now Lou will never bear a sword while in a sword fight unless I give him a sword. So Gil went back and plotted a bit more. And he came up with another idea. So this time they disguised themselves as musicians and came back into Ironheart's court. They played for a while, and Ironheart quite liked these musicians. Then Gilwayn started his plan. He went, we're under attack, please, what are we going to do, my lady? And Ironheart was like, do you have swords? Can you fight? And Gil said, my son here can fight, but he has no sword. And Ironheart went, right, here you go. And she gave a sword to Lou. And at that, Gilwayn removed their disguises and told Ironheart that her curse had not worked, for she has given her son a sword. And now, once more, Ironheart was not pleased with this. So she decreed that he would marry no woman or child who was born of woman. Gilwayn, well, he was a master magician. He had ways around this, so this didn't bother him too much. So he went away and he plotted and he planned, and he talked to Math, his friend. Now Math was still annoyed with Ironheart for deceiving him. So Math said, why don't we make to Lou a wife? So they gathered the flower petals around and they enchanted it and used magics to make a wife, and they called her Blood. And Blood was the most beautiful of all the women of Wales. And Lou and Blood married and were very happy. Now one day when Lou was off battling, Blood went out for a walk and met a warrior, and they talked and they found they got on rather well, and as the rules of hospitality, she had to invite him back to the keep. So they did, and they got on well, and they talked and laughed and had a lovely time, and they found themselves falling in love. Now Blood was bound to Lou, and she could not escape these bindings, so they had to kill Lou to get rid of her. And the warrior said that he would do the deed if we could find out how to kill Lou. And now Lou was an immortal warrior. The magics of his foster father meant that he could only be killed in a specific way. So Blood said to the warrior that she would talk to Lou and find out how to kill him. And one day, when she and Lou were in bed, Blood said, I am worried about you dying, my lord. How could I make sure that these events will never happen? And Lou said, these events are circumstantial. They will never happen unless I make them so. And she was like, please tell me. So said, right, I will show you. I must do the splits over a cauldron and be stabbed through the heart with a wooden spear. And she was like, will you show me? And he, well, Lou loved his wife, so he said, yeah, I'll show you. So he stood over, he did the splits over a cauldron, and Blood's lover turned up with a spear and went to spear him, but he missed. And Lou employed magic to turn himself into a falcon and fly off, where he then went to his foster father. And his foster father was not pleased with Blood's actions, and so they declared war on Blood and her lover, and they ran around the lush countryside avoiding Blood's warriors. Eventually, Lou and the warrior fought, and Lou killed the warrior, but would not take Blood back, and so he cursed Blood and turned her into an owl. And that's why the Welsh word for owl is Blodeuwedd, because they have flower faces, just like the flower maiden, and named after. The end.